Hello and welcome to Lesson 7 on Learning Python. In the last video, Lesson 6, I set you a little challenge after we looked at the idea of using try and except to catch errors when the user enters something that's not what we expected. Now, if you haven't looked at that video, it would be recommended to look at these videos roughly in order, as they do tend to link on one to the next. But if you'd like to skip the solution to that problem and look at what I'm looking at today, which is generating random numbers to create a simple maths game, then simply click on the little link you see on the screen now to jump straight ahead to that part of this video. Otherwise, what I'm going to do now is just to show you the solution to the challenge that I set last time. Now, we have this loop here, while true, which continues to run until we have something that we can use, because we're asking the user here to input a number. Please enter a whole number, and we're using input to grab that number. We're then trying to turn whatever the user types into an integer. INT, remember, is short for integer. So we're trying to turn that into an integer. Now, if we can't, because the user has typed in something silly, they've typed in a fraction, they've typed in a word, they've typed in a symbol, then what will happen is that this try will identify that there's an error, and rather than the program crashing, it'll jump straight to the except line and simply tell the user they've made a mistake, and then the while true loop will kick in and send us back up to the top of this try loop where we'll ask again, until eventually we get a number that we can use. We come out of that loop because this line is no longer indented, so that signals to the computer our loop is over, and it now just simply outputs the number the user has typed in multiplied by itself, so the square of that number. And the challenge I set to you was to add in a second input so that we could have the user enter two numbers and then output those two numbers multiplied together. But what we need to do is to continue to include the error checking solution that we included last time, which is the try except, to make sure that for our second number the user again is not an idiot and doesn't type in something stupid. Now, there are two ways in which we could do this. I'll show you both ways. One is the obvious easy way, but that will include a problem, and then I'll show you a better way of doing it. First of all, let's just simply try taking the whole of this line where we're inputting a number and putting it into a variable called a, and I'm going to paste that line underneath and simply change the a to a b. Now, what this means is that we've now created a second variable, and after we've had the user enter a number and we've put that into the variable called a, we now ask the user to input a second whole number, and that number is then going to be put into a variable called b. Now, if either of these cause an error because the user doesn't type a whole number, then we're going to jump down to except, tell the user off, and then go back up to while true, and then keep going to ask the user again for a whole number. And that seems fairly good. Let's change the output to a times b, so we're multiplying these two variables together, and see what happens. So I'm going to press Shift F10 to run this game, and if I was to enter something silly here like 3.6, well, I've got an error. That's not a valid whole number. So you see that the try has identified, it's had a go. I've done something stupid, so it's jumped down to accept, tells me off, and then jumps back up to try. So let's try again. Let's type in the word red. No, that's still not accepted. Let's try in a proper number this time. Let's type in the number 4. Okay, that's fine. It's accepted that. So now I've got the prompt to please enter a second whole number. So that's this prompt here. It's now asking me to input a number, and it's going to put that number into b. So it's already got the number 4 in the variable a. Now it wants a second whole number for b. Let's type blue. That's not a valid whole number. Okay, so our error checking seems fine. Except it isn't, because if we look at the prompt I'm now being shown, it's not asking me for the second number again. It's gone right back to the beginning to ask me for the first number. In other words, it's now completely ignored the 4 that it accepted earlier on and put into A, just simply because I've made a mistake with the second number. So I now have to start all over again with my 4, and then I can type in my 3.6, no, and we're back to the beginning again. I have to type in the 4. So hopefully you can see the problem here, that until I get both numbers correct, it's never going to multiply them together. It's going to keep on sending me back to the beginning to start A all over again. So yes, my error checking is working, but not very helpful and not very efficient. So what I wouldn't do is put that line in there. Instead, what I would want to do is to take this whole loop from the while true all the way down to the last indented line. I would copy the whole of that segment of code and I would paste that underneath. Then what I would do is change the name of the variable in the second copy of the code to B. I'll then change the prompt as well to second. And we've already got the output here as print A times B. So why have I done this? Well, first of all, we set up a loop here, a while true loop, that tries over and over again to get the user to enter a whole number. Now, until they do that, it will keep on generating this error message here. But as soon as they do enter a whole number, that is going to be put into the variable A, and this loop ends, which means we're now at this part of our program. So that whole top section now is going to be completely ignored. We can't go back to that. A is done. But of course now I have to input B. If there's a problem entering a number for B, I enter a word or a fraction, then this loop will keep on cycling over and over. But it won't ever send me back to the beginning. It won't ask me for A all over again as long as A has been entered. So let's see how this looks then. Let's run this program. So Shift F10, enter a whole number. First of all, if I type in something silly, I get an error and I have another go. Let's now enter the number 4. Please enter a second whole number. Okay, now what happens if I enter something silly like blue? It's not a valid whole number, please try again, but here's the prompt. It's not going back to the beginning, it's already happy with the first number I entered, it's just going to keep on asking me for the second number until eventually I type in a valid second number and then it outputs the number 20. So I hope that shows you how we could create a simple validation technique, which is what we call that, when we're checking to make sure that what the user is inputting is valid, it is allowed. And if we don't do this, then the potential is for our program to crash and cause all sorts of problems. So making programs robust so that they can't easily be crashed by the user, misunderstanding the instructions, is good programming practice. So what we're going to move on to now is to look at generating a random number. The idea of this is to create a little maths game. So let's look at starting a new program here. I'm going to delete this code now, start afresh, and have a look at creating random numbers. So how do we generate a random number in Python? Well, in fact, a lot of the hard work has already been done for us, because a lot of wonderful people who have developed the Python language over the years have already created a whole bunch of code specifically for generating random numbers. They've bundled all that code together in what we call a library, and that library is available to us whenever we create a Python program. All we have to do is import that library into our program. So we use the import word, and the library to do with random numbers is fairly obviously called random. So if we want to use random numbers within our program, we just have to put import random at the top, and then we've now got all that code to do with random number generation at our disposal. So that saves us a whole bunch of time. Now, if we want to create a whole number, to create a random whole number, which we do as we're building a little maths game here, we can use a very simple little bit of code that's packaged up in this random library. What I'm going to do is create a variable. I'm going to call that A, and I'm going to say A equals random, which is the name of the library that we're using, dot, and then I can choose here the particular bit of code in that random library that I want to use. And they've included a little function called randint, which generates a random integer, a random whole number. Now we have to tell the computer what sort of number we're looking for, and so in brackets after that we have to say which numbers it is between. So let's say we're doing a game where we have a dice roll and we want a random number between 1 and 6. So all we do is we write 1, 6 in the brackets, and that's it. So A equals random dot randint brackets 1, 6. Now let's have a little look at that. Let's type print, which is to output, to display on the screen what we want, and we'll print the variable A so that we'll see the random number between 1 and 6. Now if I run my code, you can see down here, let's press Alt F10, oh yeah, Shift F10, my mistake. There we are, we've got the number 5. Now of course if I want to run that again, I'll get a different random number. So this time I get 1. Do it again, this time I get 6. And each time I run this program, you can see I'm getting a different random number. So 3, 6, 5, 5, 6 again. So that's how to generate a random number. If we want to generate a random number for our maths game that's say between 10 and 20, then again those are the numbers that we need to put up here, 10, 20, and again if I run the program you'll see now I'm getting the number 10, now the number 14, 20, 17, 15 and so on. I'm sure you get the idea. Now for the maths game what we want is to be able to generate a question for the user, which we'll keep it simple, we'll just do addition for the moment. It's going to have two numbers, two randomly generated numbers, and the user has to try to work out what the answer is. So first of all we need to have two random numbers. So what I'm going to do is on the next line have a second variable which, using my amazing imagination, I'm going to call B, and again I'm using the library random, then dot tells me what part of that library I'm using, what particular instruction, and it's the randint instruction, and again I want a random number between 10 and 20. Now, in fact, I don't want to print A. What I want to do is work out what the answer is. I need to know what the answer to the question is. We're going to be asking the user what A plus B equals. So for my question, I need another variable, which we'll call C. C equals A plus B. So now C contains the answer to the question. We now need to display to the user the question. So let's type the question, print, then we'll open our open our brackets rather, and we'll put the first number, which is A, so we'll just use the variable here, A. Then we'll want a plus sign, so we can simply separate each part of our question with a comma. Let's put in speech marks then, because this is text, not a variable name or a number, the plus sign, and then a comma and B. And we can even put in there another symbol, the equals sign. So print A plus B equals. So if I now run my program, 10 plus 20 equals. So it's asking me what 10 plus 20 is. Let's run it again, and I've got 15 plus 20, and then 14 plus 14, 13 plus 14, and so on. So I'm getting different random numbers, different questions each time. So what we've done so far in this video, the first half of it, if you watched that half, was to think about how we can input a number from the user and how we can use the try except to be able to test that what the user is typing in is valid, it's allowed. In this section, we've looked at how we can generate a random number and how we can display a random maths question using two random numbers. So the challenge, which I will reveal the answer to in the next video, your task, if you like, is to work out how we can combine these two things, the getting the input from the user and testing that it's the sort of input that we're expecting, and asking the user, or being able to display to the user, a random maths question. What we want to be able to do then is to display to the user a random maths question, and then to allow the user to input an answer, and then we can check to see if that answer is correct. And if it is, we can say congratulations, and if it isn't, we can say have another go, try again. So that's your challenge. This is all the code that you need. If you're not sure, then I suggest what you do is have a look at the last lesson, which is lesson 6, and then look at the first half of this video in which I go into more detail on the whole try, accept and input features that we've looked at before, and then have another look through the second one. As I say, these videos aren't really so much about giving you all the answers, although they are there, but it's about giving you the opportunity to look at the information given and then try to understand it and use it in your own way. But I will be regularly putting these videos out on this channel, so hopefully you can then keep up with the series, and I hope that that will be of use to you. If you did find this video of use, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you think other people might find this useful as well, it would be fantastic if you could share. Don't forget to subscribe before you go, and that way you'll know exactly when the next video in this series has been published. Thank you very much indeed for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.